Alain Delon, the legend of French cinema. He lived in a time with no Instagram, no TikTok edits making people famous overnight. And yet, Delon became one of the biggest sex symbols the world has ever seen, a name still whispered 60 years later. One look at his face and you get it. Jawline, hair, eyebrows, piercing blue eyes, those features that seem sculpted rather than born. Some even say Alain Delon might be the most handsome man to ever walk the earth. His beauty became timeless, the kind that isn't just remembered, but almost mythologized. Delon himself once admitted it. He was very, very handsome. From the moment he was 18 until well into his 50s, women were obsessed with him. He didn't need to brag. The whole world could see it. In this video, we're gonna take a look at the story of Alain Delon, how a young man from France rose to become an icon, why his looks stood out so much, and how his legacy of beauty still lives on today. Alain Delon was born on November 8, 1935, in France. Back then, the country was struggling. The 1930s weren't kind to anyone. France was caught between wars, and kids were suffering from poverty and malnutrition. People didn't even get the nutrients they needed to grow up healthy, and Alain was no exception. His father, François Delon, worked as a projectionist, later becoming a cinema director. His mother, Edith Arnold, worked in a pharmacy and as a theater usher. The two actually met at the cinema, which feels kind of poetic, a love story born in front of the screen. But their marriage didn't last long. They divorced when Alain was just 4. After that, both of his parents remarried, leaving Alain bouncing between homes and half-siblings. He even got sent to live with a foster family called the Neros. The father was a prison guard. And honestly, that period left a scar that never really healed. As a kid, Delon was obsessed with bicycles. He actually wanted to become a professional racer. But when his foster parents passed away in 1946, he had to go back to his birth parents. They didn't really know what to do with him, so they sent him off to a Catholic boarding school. That's where things got rough. He started misbehaving, fighting, skipping rules, causing chaos. He even stole the school director's motorcycle once and got expelled again. By the time he was 13, he'd already been kicked out of several schools. At one point, he got a small acting role, playing a thug in a short, silent film made by his father's friend. But Delon didn't really care about school or acting yet. At 14, he decided he wanted to run away to Chicago with a friend. Yeah, literally run away. They actually tried to hitchhike there but didn't make it far. The police caught them, and they both ended up in jail for a short time before being sent back home. After that, his parents basically gave up on the idea of him studying. His stepfather, who owned a butcher and delicatessen shop, made Alain work there instead. He'd wake up early, carry kilos of sausages from the market, and train to take over the family business one day. But Alain wasn't the type for that kind of life. He didn't like rules, didn't like being told what to do, and honestly, he was already too wild for the small-town routine. He partied a lot, got into bar fights, and even joined a local gang at one point. Nobody could have guessed that this rebellious kid working in a butcher shop would one day become the most beautiful face in cinema. By the time Alain turned 17, he knew his military service was coming, so he joined the French Navy early. He was stationed in what was then called French Indochina, basically modern-day Vietnam, working as a first-class seaman. But the military life didn't exactly calm him down. Towards the end of the Indochina War, Alain got arrested for stealing a jeep and taking it for a joyride, which ended up with the vehicle literally falling into a stream. He lost his radio license, got a dishonorable discharge, and ended up celebrating his 20th birthday behind bars. That time left a deep mark on him though. Despite all the chaos, he said the military taught him discipline, honor, and respect for the French flag. It's also where he developed his obsession with weapons and discovered cinema. He watched Touche pas au Grisby, starring Jean Gabin, and that performance stuck with him for life. When he came back to France in 1956, things were rough. He had no direction, no money, and he was mad at his parents for letting him go to Indochina in the first place. He cut contact with them completely and tried to survive on his own. He rented a small room at the Regina Hotel and worked whatever job he could find, loading produce at the Paris markets, waiting tables, anything to get by. Around that time, he started meeting all kinds of people, singers, artists, and even gangsters. He crossed paths with the future French icon Dalida, who he'd later have an affair with. But in places like Pigalle and Montmartre, Alain got close to a completely different crowd, the underworld. Thugs, hustlers, and gigolos. One of them, a man named Carlos, took him under his wing and protected him. Alain admired the loyalty and silence of that world, that code of honor kind of life. He even got taken in by a few prostitutes who gave him food and a place to stay. Honestly, back then, nobody thought he'd ever become an actor. Everything about his life looked like it was heading toward one path, the streets. Maybe even a life as a pimp. After moving to Paris, Alain Delon started hanging around Saint-Germain-des-Prés, the center of art, jazz, and cinema at the time. That's where he met actress Brigitte Aubert, who had just worked with Alfred Hitchcock in To Catch a Thief. They lived together for a while, and being with her pulled Delon away from his rough past and closer to the movie world. In 1957, he went with her to the Cannes Film Festival, and that's where everything changed. Delon met people from the film industry, including Jean-Claude Brialy and his future agent, George Boehm. He was even noticed by Henry Wilson, a Hollywood talent scout working for producer David O. Selznick, who offered him a contract to go to the US. Delon went to Rome for a trial run, lived with photographer John Paolo Barbieri, and did some test shoots at Cinecittà Studios. Selznick was impressed and offered him a 7-year Hollywood deal, but only if he learned English. Delon went back to Paris to study the language, but then met actress Michelle Corduit, who convinced her husband, director Yves Allégret, to give him a role in a French film instead. At first, Delon said no, but eventually he agreed, and that's how his acting career really began. He later said that Allégret gave him one piece of advice that changed everything: don't act, just live. From there, Delon started getting noticed. He appeared in Be Beautiful but shut up alongside other rising stars like Jean-Paul Belmondo. During filming, he crashed a borrowed car in a tunnel, and the small scar it left under his chin became one of his signature features. Then came 1958, his big break. He was chosen by the famous German actress Romy Schneider to star with her in Christine. They didn't like each other at first. She thought he was rude, he thought she was boring. But over time, they fell in love and became one of Europe's most iconic couples. The press called them the fiancés of Europe. After Christine, Delon's career took off fast. He became a leading man, admired for both his talent and his unreal looks. By the mid-60s, Alain Delon was already a massive star in Europe, but he had his eyes on something bigger: Hollywood. In 1965, he said he wanted to make one movie in America and one in Europe every year. But there was one problem: his French accent. He admitted that it held him back from playing certain roles, saying he didn't want to play Americans until he could master the accent. Still, Delon made several attempts to break into Hollywood. He had the looks, the talent, and the fame, but somehow, things never fully clicked for him there. Years later, in 1979, he made one last try at American stardom. He signed with the famous Hollywood agent Sue Mengers and starred in the Concorde Airport 79. Unfortunately, the movie didn't do well, and that marked the end of his Hollywood journey. After that, Delon decided to stick to what he did best: acting and producing films in France. But not everything in Alain Delon's life was glamorous. In 1968, he got caught up in one of France's biggest scandals of the decade, a real-life crime mystery that made headlines across the country. It all started when the body of his former bodyguard, Stefan Markovitch, was found dumped outside Paris. Things got serious fast when investigators found a letter Markovitch had written to his brother before he died. In it, he said, "If I'm killed, it's 100% because of Alain Delon and his godfather, François Marcantoni." The media went crazy with rumors, dragging Delon's name into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Even the French Prime Minister at the time, who later became President, Georges Pompidou, got pulled into the investigation because of gossip about wild parties and secret connections. It was a dark moment in Delon's career, a mix of fame, mystery, and scandal that blurred the line between his movie roles and his real life. Alain Delon is often remembered as one of the most beautiful men to ever appear on screen. His looks weren't just striking, they were cinematic. He had this rare combination of elegance, mystery, and danger that made people around the world obsessed with him. Over the years, he became more than just an actor. He became a living symbol of French beauty and sophistication. His fame wasn't only about his talent, but also his presence. The way he carried himself, the way the camera loved his face, it all shaped his legend. Many actors around the world have taken inspiration from Delon's style, the effortless cool that defined his image. Even critics have pointed out that Delon's biggest legacy might not be his acting alone, but the image he left behind, the timeless style icon, the ultimate sex symbol of international cinema. His look and aura helped him break beyond French culture and connect with audiences everywhere. When it comes to movies, Alain Delon didn't just act, he owned the screen. His breakthrough came in 1960 with Purple Noon, where he played Tom Ripley, a cold, calculating, dangerously charming man. That role made him an international star. People couldn't take their eyes off him. The camera loved every angle of his face. Then came Rocco and His Brothers, one of his most emotional roles. It showed a different side of him, not just a pretty face, but real depth. Critics around the world praised his performance. But the movie that truly sealed his legend was Le Samouraï. In that film, he played Jeff Costello, a silent, mysterious hitman who barely says a word, yet says everything with his eyes. It's one of the most stylish movies ever made. That cool, minimalistic character became Delon's signature: calm, sharp, and untouchably cool. He also starred in The Leopard, directed by Luchino Visconti, a film that showed his elegance and screen power alongside legends like Burt Lancaster. Then there was La Piscine, a movie so sensual and visually stunning that it's still talked about today. All these films defined not just his career, but a whole era of European cinema. Delon wasn't just acting, he was setting the standard for what cool looked like on screen. In 1985, he won the prestigious César Awards, basically France's version of the Oscars, for Best Actor for his role in the film Our Story, where he played an alcoholic. That performance proved he could go beyond his looks and deliver something powerful and real on screen. He was also nominated for a Golden Globe Awards for his role as Tancredi in The Leopard, a passionate, penniless young man caught in a changing world. It's one of his most iconic performances and a big reason why his name became known far beyond France. Alain Delon in his prime was on another level. He wasn't just handsome, he was too handsome to be real. His face had this perfect balance that you just don't see often. Everything was in harmony: his piercing blue eyes, thick eyebrows, nose, and perfectly shaped jawline. Even his hair looked like it belonged in a painting. What made him different was how his face blended both masculine and feminine features, the strength of a man, but the softness and symmetry that made him almost angelic. It's the kind of face that doesn't age in memory. Alain Delon's beauty wasn't just admired on screen, it was something that drew attention long before he ever became an actor. In his early days, When he worked at his stepfather's butcher shop, many young women used to come by just to see the handsome Alain in his white apron and cap. Later, after returning from the army, he'd walk around the port in a marine uniform during his spare time. Girls would literally stop and stare at him in the streets. This was the 1950s. No Instagram, no social media, just raw magnetic presence. Women were obsessed with him before the world even knew his name. But Alain Delon's personal life was as intense as his looks. He's been linked to many beautiful women, and not all of those stories were romantic fairy tales. Over the years, the actor has also faced criticism for past statements in which he admitted slapping women. Still, his love affairs became the stuff of legend in France. One of his earliest and most talked about relationships was with the German singer Nico. She once said about him, "He was the most dangerous man I ever met. He was like a gypsy, with strong eyes and dark hair, and I wanted him for myself." They lived together in the US, but when Delon returned to France, he left her pregnant, a scandal at the time. And then, there was Romy Schneider. Their story became iconic, a mix of passion, chaos, and timeless beauty. When they first met, Romy actually found him annoying. She once said, "I saw a man who was too handsome, too young, and too coiffed for my liking." But during a train ride to a film festival, something shifted. They flirted instead of fighting, and soon she was deeply in love. She followed him to Paris and moved into his apartment, despite her parents' concerns. Their engagement became headline news across Europe. But as their careers exploded, they had less and less time for each other. Alain confessed years later, "I loved the first Romy more than anything in the world. And I hated the other one just as much." Their chemistry was undeniable. Their film Christine had over 3 million screenings in France, making it the 17th most popular movie of the year. They worked together again in a stage play directed by Luchino Visconti, who saw great talent in Delon. The director's close bond with Alain caused tension, but it didn't destroy the couple. Still, in 1964, Alain and Romy officially ended their relationship. Even after they broke up, Alain tried several times to reconnect with her. Their love story remained unforgettable to the public. In 2009, Delon openly admitted that one of his biggest regrets was not marrying Romy. And in 2018, he called her the love of my life. This intense mix of beauty, obsession, scandal, and love affairs made Alain Delon not just a movie star, but a legend of his era. His beauty will never be forgotten. Prime Delon is timeless, one of those rare faces that feels like it doesn't belong to any decade, just pure perfection. Even today, when you look at his old photos, he still looks better than most actors now. His love life was just as iconic as his looks. If you want another video about Alain Delon and the women in his life, let me know in the comments. In his later years, Alain Delon's health started to decline. In 2019, he suffered a stroke that left him hospitalized after experiencing severe dizziness and headaches. By August that year, he was recovering in Switzerland. Then in 2022, he began an experimental treatment for a slow-progressing lymphoma. But by the summer of 2023, his children decided to stop it. It was weakening him more than helping. Delon had always been open about his views on life and death. In a 2021 interview, he said he supported euthanasia, calling it the most logical and natural thing. After his former wife Natalie passed away, he told his son Anthony that if he ever fell into a coma, he didn't want to be kept alive by machines. Some media took those words out of context, sparking rumors that he was planning to end his life, but his son Alain Fabien denied it. By 2024, Delon was living quietly and privately at his estate in Douchy. His health had worsened, and his children, Anthony, Anushka, and Alain Fabien, became involved in a very public family dispute over his condition and care. Still, they reunited to protect him from an abusive former companion, showing that even through conflict, they stood by their father in the end. After a long and legendary career, Alain Delon passed away on August 18, 2024, at his home in Douchy, surrounded by family. He was 88 years old. He had been diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma earlier that year. Before his death, Delon reportedly asked for his beloved dog, a Belgian shepherd named Loba, to be buried alongside him, though his family chose to keep the dog alive. It was the quiet ending of a man who once lit up every screen he walked onto, a legend whose beauty and presence defined an entire era.
D'abord, j'ai eu beaucoup de chance. Ça, c'est une chose certaine. Et ensuite, j'ai beaucoup appris, parce qu'il faut apprendre dans la vie, il faut toujours apprendre. Et si j'ai appris, c'est grâce aux metteurs en scène avec qui j'ai travaillé. Je crois que, je ne vais pas dire ma carrière, mais le début de ma carrière, et tout ce que j'ai fait, tout ce que je suis, ce dont je suis arrivé maintenant, je le dois aux metteurs en scène avec qui j'ai travaillé.